The city of Denver, the state of Colorado, you guys have been fucking amazing.
Welcome to the Mile High Hockey Lab.
Hello and welcome to the Mile High Hockey Lab. My name is Adrian Hernandez. I am here today with a very dapper-looking Ezra Parter, Evan, and Jackie. We are here to talk Colorado Avalanche hockey on behalf of Mile High Hockey Lab and milehighhockey.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is our 56th installment, so if you enjoy this show, please head on over to any podcast platform and look for us, and you will see our extensive Avalanche catalog. So there's lots to talk about today, and of course, as usual, please like, subscribe, share, and turn your alerts on so you know every single time that we are live. But it's exciting time to be a Colorado Avalanche fan. Obviously, the Avs just lost last night to the Canadiens, which is a bummer, but they were, on a 9-game winning streak before that. So let's just get right into things. I'm going to send this one over to you, Evan. As I just mentioned, the Avs lost last night to the Canadiens, a non-playoff team, to end their 9-game win streak, almost had 10. What did you take away from that contest?
Well, I took away from that contest. I was up in the nosebleeds for this one with a friend last night, and it was just kind of sluggish, I think is the word I would use. The Avs never really got connected all that well. They had some difficulties, just being able to pass the puck, turned it over a few times, and ultimately didn't really get a lot on net. Granted, they almost recorded 30 shots, but when you look at how this team has been recently with scoring up, down the lineup, you would think that 30 shots is like the minimum that they get to on a nightly basis. So I don't know. It was a mix of that. And then there's also a mix of Samuel Montembeault standing on his head, especially in the first period when the Avs had some of their best chances, I would say. And then Montreal also blocked a ton of shots and got in the way. And really we're just kind of a pest, I guess I could say, on defense. I think they ended up blocking 20 shots, and the Avs had, I think, 27 or 28 on net. So almost half of the shot attempts, at least, were blocked by the Canadiens, and they did a good job of holding the Avs up. And ultimately, you weren't going to win every game, which is fine. A 9-game win streak is great as it is. But you're bound to lose one or two eventually. So that was that, and a new streak starts on Thursday.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. A new streak starts on Thursday, because I'm with you. This game was kind of like just meh, bleh, just kind of throw it away. Is what it is. The Habs had a formula, and they executed what they came to do, which was, like you mentioned, get bodies in front of the net. Montembeault, I think, played better than he has in the past this season, at least. He should be a pretty good goaltender in the future, so I don't think that comes as any surprise. I'm with you. I thought the Avs played well, but just didn't quite get the payoff in certain scenarios, and that's just sometimes how it goes in a game inside the NHL. But Ezra, I'm going to send this one your way. Despite the fact that we didn't see the Avs continue their win streak, we did see Mikko and Nate continue their point streaks, specifically Nate's home point streak, which is he's narrowing in on that every home game, knock on wood, thing that Gretzky did. However, he'll have one more home game than Gretzky did in that season. So he has a chance to set the record ultimately. What are your thoughts on their performance last night?
Yeah, they were solid. I mean, they got that point early, and it looked like it was going to be a train wreck because McKinnon scoring on a goal like that's, highly skilled, but also kind of like a little bit of a lucky rebound. It's amazing. He looked like he was ready to pop 6 in. Didn't quite happen, obviously. But, it's a fantastic start. And then when they got the opportunity to get their engines back going on the power play, they couldn't do anything. That's my one area of concern on the night, really, is the power play had chances to claw back the lead or take the lead, and it really struggled. So, I thought that their game was good, both of them. Rantanen is kind of his normal floaty self, and nothing just found its way in like he did a couple games ago. But McKinnon looked really good, and he hit a couple posts. Montembeault was very good. Ultimately, it's a game where the whole team controlled play. They just weren't quite firing on all cylinders, and the puck wouldn't go in. But there were some shifts in that first period with the top line and the top pair out there. Just 2 minutes in the offensive zone cycling at even strength. it looked like it should have been a train wreck for wrecking over the Canadians, and it just didn't happen.
I agree with you there, and it's funny that you mentioned the consistent offensive zone time, because Mosier was driving me nuts on the broadcast because he's like, the dam has got to burst, and I agreed with him, but I'm just like, it added to it has nothing to do with Mosier. He does a great job, but it just added to the frustration. It was like, okay, so when is this dam gonna burst? Because I was right there with you. It felt like the Avs were controlling things. I mean, even Mikko hit the post at one point with kind of like a fluttering knuckleball. Right in front. There were some weird bounces happening. So, I mean, I think the two of you touched on anything, but Jackie, was there anything from last night's contest that we haven't touched on that you'd like to speak on, or on what we have?
I was also there last night, so
Nice.
it was a nice cheap game to go to.
Yeah.
Like shout out those variable pricing, because
Exactly.
sometimes there's a good deal.
Mhm.
I agree that they were pretty dangerous in the first period. I also agree that I think the power play took a lot of their momentum away. It just, to me, they just don't have enough tricks in the bag there. Like when it works, it's good and that's great and everything, but it's just like there's no plan B. I felt like in the second and third period they became pretty perimeter. Like I know the analytics look good, but there was a lot of just shooting from the perimeter. There was like nothing dangerous.
Yeah.
In Montreal, it was tough for them to get the puck. So I mean, the Avs did have the puck more for sure, but I don't know. They just kind of played keep away in a way, and then they kind of played keep away from their own scoring. So,
Yeah.
and then I don't think Montreal had a power play until the middle of the third, and you're just kind of wondering, like, are they really going to finish this game without giving Montreal power play? And then, well, there you go. And then they got two, including the double minor. And not to say that they didn't like earn those, because definitely the high stick was like legit. I forget what the other one was, holding or something, hooking. So you just kind of knew that like they were going to get power play time by the end of the game. And then when you have to spend 6 minutes on the penalty kill, like that's it.
Yep.
That's just kind of how this one ended.
Yeah, it's hard to get anything going when you're on the kill for 6 straight minutes, but I'm with you there. It felt like the third period, I had hope. Everybody was like, oh, the best third period team in hockey, yada, yada. But in my mind, I was with you. Like the perimeter game was what we were seeing most of by that time. And it kind of felt like a lost cause unless they were going to change things a little bit. And I don't know if there's anything for other teams kind of to take away from this in terms of Montreal's approach to stopping the Avalanche, because I think that if you do this, if you try to take that game plan into a 7-game series against the Avalanche, you might lose 8-2 or 8-1 in 2 or 3 of those games. So I think it just kind of worked out for the Canadians in certain ways. And then, like you said, the perimeter stuff shows itself on the amount of block shots that the Canadians had in last night's contest. So I'm with you there. We'll throw that one away. We'll start on a new winning streak, the Avalanche, coming up here tomorrow. But let's talk a little bit about another game last week, which was, as I put it in the script, one of the funniest games I've watched in a very long time. And I put it that way because I didn't even watch the first period. I sat down, second period, it was 2-0 already. And then, Pittsburgh puts 2 more up on the Avs. It's 4-0. I'm sitting there going, well, maybe I should stop watching again. And then all of a sudden, the Avs start chipping away. They get one, they get another right before the end of the period. So, Evan, tell me, what did you think of that miraculous 4-goal comeback for the Colorado Avalanche, capped off by my guy, Joe Drouin, in overtime?
Man, I mean, that game, honestly, I feel like that game should have been a prelude of what we should have seen, or what we should have come to expect last night with Montreal, that the Avs kind of didn't really have their legs to start that Pens game in particular. But then they just found a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned it in the post game recap that like the Avs are finding different ways to win games at least in this streak that they had. They had some blowouts. They had some really close, tightly contested games that were playoff like atmospheres, and then they also had a few comebacks. And Pittsburgh was one of them. And while Pittsburgh is not the same, demon team that they were a decade ago, in the Eastern Conference anymore, they are still a very good team when you have Sidney Crosby recording 4 points in a game. So You know, it was just a matter of like the team all coming together. Really started with the depth, which is a good thing to point out there. Of like Sean Walker getting the scoring going, Yakov Trenin then getting his first goal, and then from there, then the Stars took over in the third period. So I don't know. Funny's a good way to describe it, I guess. I would use the word improbable because holy moly, I mean the difference between the first 30 minutes and the last 30 minutes of that game is they looked like a completely different team, which is just nuts.
Well, it's funny. I thought they looked like a completely different team, and I also thought that Sidney Crosby was on an absolute tear. And I was like, well, this is going to be one of those games where it's just the Sidney Crosby story, and he got Nate again. And then all of a sudden, they just come roaring back. So improbable is a good way to put it. That deflection goal Crosby had was absolute filth. I don't even understand how such a thing can happen, but it did. He found the angle that I didn't even know exists. But Ezra, what was your takeaway from that comeback game?
Just, it's wonderful how the team is. You can't keep them down, and that's good to see. I didn't get to see the game live, so I was catching up on it later, and I already knew what was going to happen. So I was looking for what was coming, and there really weren't signs of the comeback early on. They looked like they were dead in the water in the first period. So I love the ability to turn it on later. Although, ideally you start a little bit better. It was interesting to see in Montreal. They came out and they did start strong, and then they were like, okay, we started strong, cool, and pulled the and kind of pulled back from there, which you don't love to see. But obviously the team is not a team that you have to worry about that consistently with. So I think it's an incredible comeback.
Yeah,
that's my take.
I mentioned after the game that, like, they say there's Heisman moments in football where guys who are up for the Heisman, they have a game, and all of a sudden it's like, that's the Heisman moment. That's what you look to when you ask yourself, why does this guy win the Heisman? Well, to me, that game really was at least a chapter in what is the book of McKinnon's heart moments, because he really did seem to, at least when pretty much after when the second period ended and he got clearly hooked right before the period ended, and probably could have put the team to a 1-goal deficit right then and there, and he smashed his stick against the glass. I went, uh-oh, that's Mad Nate. And as much as we harp on Mad Miko for not necessarily working out, Mad Nate typically works out 100% of the time. So once I saw that, I was like, uh-oh, this might be a story for us. And it turns out it was. Nathan MacKinnon and Jonathan Drouin possibly having the best season of their career together is just such an awesome story. But speaking of awesome stories, last week we talked about Justus Annunen earning an extension, and I swear we did not have any insight, but man, look at it. Here we are next week, next episode, and Justus Annunen got his contract extension. So Jackie, I'm going to send this one to you, because you and I were in agreement months ago that it kind of felt like Annunen's time in Colorado had come to an end. Here we are today. He seems like the bona fide backup, and he's got a 2-year deal with the Avs. What's your reaction?
Well, my reaction is it's not exactly a backup contract.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's done certainly well and better than I expected to be able to have them feel comfortable enough rolling with him into the postseason. But I still ultimately feel like this organization wants to find a veteran backup, and they felt like they're going to have better luck with that this summer. I mean, we'll see who they get. He could still have a chance at it. I mean, I don't really believe the whole fight for a job in camp. Like, they have everyone slotted. Like, I don't believe it. It's like a great storyline, but it just doesn't happen. So it just really depends who they add. But this isn't it. Like, $800,000 next year, and then $875 after that. Like, that's third goalie variable money. The 2-year term also makes sense, because then if they have to waive him, it's less likely he'll get claimed with the term. I think they do like him more than I believed. So they've warmed up to him, but to me, this contract doesn't really indicate a commitment. I mean, it's commits him to the organization, but that doesn't necessarily mean the Avalanche.
Gotcha. So let me see if I'm getting this right. So you're kind of saying that the way the contract's structured money wise, it's made it appealing for not just the Avalanche to keep him and have him as their backup, which he's getting paid way less than a typical backup, but it also makes him more attractive to other teams in the event that he is shopped around. Or do you just see him as like a third goalie in the AHL until the contract is up and then we'll readdress it?
I mean, the 2-year term makes it a little bit more difficult for him to get claimed on waivers because,
Got you.
like it's prohibitive, is what I'm saying. It's like,
Okay.
well, other teams, because we've seen goalies get claimed, we've done it ourselves, but the 2-year term is like, you know,
Yeah.
it kind of it kind of keeps teams away, and so that's kind of a little bit built-in protection. You know, I just don't believe he's the heir apparent. Like, I just don't think there's any way that they plan on him being the starter. But is there a chance he could be the long-term backup? Maybe, but I don't think they're there yet. So I think this is kind of like a high-end third goal. It's kind of like a JoJo contract. Like,
Okay.
you know, someone that you don't mind if they have to be in the NHL for a stretch, but they're not really intending on that being like plan A. So I'd be
Gotcha.
really surprised if they don't add anybody in the summer. And I guess once we see who that is and what that contract looks like, then you can kind of, you know, peg exactly how Ananin fits into that. But like $800K is not backup money. Like
Yeah.
when Calvin Pickard got his extension, it was 1 million. And this was like however many years ago, 6, 7, 8 years ago. That was $1 million then. So for him to be making just 25,000 more than league minimum, and I know it's on the one way, so that's good for Eustace. Like this is definitely a reward, but that to me isn't like this is our guy. You know what I mean? It's definitely hedging their bets.
Yeah, I mean I could see how you say that totally because the price point itself tells you that like my thing that you know he's not necessarily valued as high as a typical backup as you've mentioned, but I guess my thing is the term is cool for me with him in terms of the reward, like you mentioned. Like he's basically like you said not going to get picked up on waivers. That's nice. But my thing with the Avs is if he does serve as an effective backup and he's at $800,000 a year, that's pretty awesome. So I think my thing is like, did he feel like there was really a market out there for him beyond what he got paid by the Avalanche, or did he feel like it was just a solid fit? Evan, what's your reaction to kind of what Jackie has to say about the Ananen deal?
Well, also sorry if I'm dog sitting and trying to fight off this big dog right now. So my apologies if you hear a bark or see my screen move and all that. But
It's all good.
I would agree with Jackie. I think in the sense of you know, we kind of have to wait and see. I think what happens in the summer. Ananen is at least now the only goalie under contract for the 2025-26 season. Because Georgiev's runs out after the end of next season, and then you have to decide what you want to do with him, if he's going to stay and how much money he's probably going to want, I would assume, being the number one in Colorado and doing pretty good and doing that job. So it's going to be really interesting to see kind of where that goes. I would really hope that Ananen is not the third, you know, goalie in the system. He could be, especially with that term, which I didn't really, I guess, kind of comprehend there, which is a great term for the Avalanche. But if it's a backup goaltender term, then that's even better. But if it's a third goalie term, then yeah, you got some thinking there to do. So I guess, yeah, I like that idea of waiting and seeing what happens in the summer, if the Avs make any other moves. And yeah, we'll just kind of have to see where it goes from there.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I definitely see what Jackie's saying. I love having Jackie on because she always brings the perspective that my Homer ass doesn't have. So thank you, Jackie. Ezra, do you have any comments on the Ananen deal?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's a perfect deal for both sides because Ananen guarantees that he gets paid a good salary for either the AHL or the NHL. That's great. And the Avalanche are in the position where they say, hey, we have this cheap guy who maybe can do the job, If he proves he can do the job, fantastic. That saves money on the roster. And if he can't do the job, okay, he's getting a little overpaid to be an AHL guy. It's not a huge deal. So I think it's really good work, and I hope he does earn the backup job. But like we've said, there's room now to add a veteran if needed. But hopefully it's not needed.
Well, we might need it, but we ain't gonna have it this season. So it's
true.
We're riding with Eustace this year and Prosvetov. So I
far,
mean,
so good with Eustace.
Yeah, I agree.
If we could touch on this real quick about other goaltender news, just with Chris McFarland on the DNVR show.
Yes.
Not was it earlier this week, last week? I don't remember, but
earlier
yeah, the news about Pavel Francouz basically sounding like he's retired, which I don't think is a surprise to me. I don't know if it's a surprise to any of us on here, but
not.
No,
yeah.
we
That
talked
was
about
my
it that way.
assumption.
Yeah. And we kind of got raked over the coals on X for thinking that, and everybody was like, "Oh, how dare you write a guy off?" It's just like the writing was kind of on the wall based on his age and the type of injury and where he ended up going after he was injured. I think said a lot. He went home, so it's like,
having multiple surgeries not work is usually a pretty big red flag.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, hats off to Frankie, man. He gave us one of the most electric performances in the Western Conference Final, and was one of the most humble goalies after being getting his name chanted by a playoff crowd. He said, I do it for the guys. It was a team win. It's just wonderful story. Frankie, thank you so much for your time in Colorado, man. If you do end up hanging him up, you had a wonderful career and you should be incredibly proud. But somebody who's not hanging him up anytime soon, hopefully, and has found some rejuvenation in their career is one Jonathan Drouin. And I figured that since we talked about Justus Annunen last week and then he got an extension, maybe I'll just put it out into the universe. Let's talk about Jonathan Drouin and his future with the Colorado Avalanche in our version of the
Breakaway Challenge.
All right, so the breakaway challenge, how we do this is each of my friends here on the panel get 1 minute to give me their claim and answer, and I give them points if I think what they have said is at least legitimately a point that we should consider. It's not really something that I feel like I can say is right or wrong, since we all have opinions. But this week, we are going to talk about Jonathan Drouin, and what I really want to get into is what is Jonathan Drouin's future? What is Jonathan Drouin's future here in Colorado? A lot of people, you mentioned the DNVR podcast, Evan, with Chris McFarland. They also did an episode just before that where AJ kind of went on the topic of Joe Drouin, saying that the Avs will probably just find another 6th or 7th forward on the open market to reclaim, to start a reclamation tour like they did with Drouin, like they did with Nichushkin. And that Drouin has priced his way out of Colorado. So this breakaway challenge asks the three of you, has Jonathan Drouin priced his way out of Colorado? And will the Avs find another person like him to fill his void as he leaves? Who wants to go first? Nobody? No takers?
All right. Yeah.
See, nobody wants to go first. The first is the hardest one, or is it the easiest one? Who knows? Okay. Ezra says he's good to go. So let's start with you, Ezra. And I'm going to get your clock up on the screen. And your time starts.
He's already started.
No, I started over. I'll start over. Your time starts now.
Yeah, Jonathan Drouin's gone. I'm sorry. I think there's one way that he could stick around, and that is if Landeskog's unable to play. And obviously, I think that is a worse scenario. I'd love for Drouin to be able to stay, but he's going to make his money. He's shown that he can play in all three zones. He's shown that he's an effective player on either wing. He's shown he can play with top of the lineup guys. He's shown he can play with bottom of the lineup guys and drive play both ways. I mean, he's a wonderful power play producer. He's going to make $5 million at minimum, and he's not going to be able to make that here if the Avalanche want to re-sign Casey Middlestat and add somebody on defense, Sean Walker or anyone else. So there's just not money for him. Even if Landeskog doesn't play, it's hard to see the money for him because Middlestat and Walker, like I said. So unfortunately, it's happy trails, Jonathan Drouin at the end of the season. But we don't have to worry about that now because we've got a playoff round to win first.
I give you that one. I'll give you that last one that you. It's so funny. I love it because I can always tell when you guys know we're getting to the end because the speaking starts going like this, like this, like this. Oh, so I gave you 8. That's a damn good round right there, Ezra.
Thank
You
you.
started. You got on a roll when you were just kind of listing the things that he's proven this season, which that helps very much. So there's a high bar to surpass. Evan, we'll go to you next. We'll do ladies last this time. Evan, are you ready to roll?
Yeah, so long as the dog next to me doesn't freak out, we're good.
All right. If the dog freaks out, you get an automatic point, and your time starts now.
I'm in agreement with Ezra. Unfortunately, I do think Jonathan Drouin is gone. He's outpriced himself. If the Avalanche wanted to keep him, they should have re-signed him back in December, January, back when there were still some question marks around him, I would say. He can play up and down the lineup 100%, and that's going to be really great for another team, of course. I do agree that the Avs are going to go and try and find somebody else on the market, another reclamation project. It's worked with Valeri Nichushkin. It's worked with Drouin, as we've already seen now. Oh my God, sorry. So yeah, and in agreement with like the re-signing and whatnot, it's gonna be really hard to do it. And even if Landeskog is done playing after this year, I think you'd have to buy him out, right? Or at least there'd have to be some sort of money that would have to go towards him. Landeskog can't just decline it and be like, "Don't give me my money." So, like I said, unfortunately,
That's LTIR.
Yeah.
You can stay on LTIR.
LTIR for 6, 7 more years.
Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah. Also, thank you to this one for literally rolling over, knocking my computer off of my lap.
Oh, what a cutie that dog! I got to give you that extra point because the dog knocked over the camera. So, and like I said, if the dog does something, you get an extra point. All right, so that gives you 6. We still got Ezra firmly in the lead with 8 points. Some quality topics there, Evan. In fact, you talked about Landeskog, which we're going to get to after the breakaway challenge as well. So, Jackie, that just leaves you. Are you ready to roll?
Yes.
All right, let's get you up there and maybe
yeah,
not.
Give me my 2 seconds. I need them all. I need them all.
All right, we're gonna wind it back, and your time starts now.
Okay, I'm gonna shock everybody. Here's optimism. I do not think he has priced himself out of Colorado. And think about this. He has already had his big extension. He's already had the 6-year deal for Montreal, and it was difficult for him to live up to it. And so you have to think about the comfortability here. Yes, it was a reclamation project. It was greatly helped by Nathan MacKinnon and their personal relationship and his time on the top line with MacKinnon. He's not going to find that everywhere else. So he really has to think about what he wants in his career. Now, no, the Avs are not going to pay him $5 million. If that's what he's asking for, he's going to have to go somewhere else, and he's going to have to live up to that kind of contract again. I also don't think he's going to get that kind of offer because contract offers have a lot to do with reputation. And even though everyone in the league knows that Drouin has had a good year and a resurgence in Colorado, they know what it looked like at the end in Montreal, and that are they going to want to give him like a 5x5 and see if it works in their organization?
Wonderful. We got it from all angles this time, and I love it because we're going to have a balanced approach in this one because I agree with Jackie. I think that in terms of what Jonathan Drouin could earn on the open market, I think it's slightly lower than we expect based on the reputation from before this season. And I also think that he's identified and realizes that he is particular in how and where he needs to play. And I think you can't get any more ideal for him than where he is right now. And I think if there's ever been a person on the Avalanche who is a take a pay cut candidate, it's Jonathan Drouin. Like you mentioned, Jackie, he's already kind of got that big contract. He's not going to be short on cash. Obviously, like you said, if he wants 5x5, that's probably not going to work here. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if he gets something more in the range of like 4, 3.5, and maybe another 3 or 4 year from the Avs sort of thing, which would be ideal. Obviously, he can get a lot more on the open market, but we're talking about him leaving money on the table. And I think that that's not unrealistic because he had all the money he needed on the table in Montreal, and we all saw how that worked out for him. I think it's huge, Jackie, how you bring up living up to the number. That was a big thing for me too.
I think it was a lot of stress on him. Like,
Yeah.
I think he just wasn't comfortable, and he's mentioned how, like, he likes that he's, no one's on his back. The media's not on his back. I think it could even be lower. I think it could be between like 2 and 3 million, but I do think the Avs are going to have to give some term. It might have to be 3 or 4 years. That's probably where the compromise is going to be. Like, he's not signing for $1 million if that's the Avs budget. Good luck. But then good luck finding that on the open market. I do not think it's as easy as, just sign some other project. There's been a lot of failed projects.
Yeah.
Good point.
Like, this team needs cheap players that work on this team. Like, to roll the dice every year.
Remember Yakupov, how we pretended to be excited for
or
that?
Tatar. I mean, we've even seen it this year. Like,
good point.
You can't just like go and find another one. Like, it's not that simple. So I really, really think they need to make it work. I'll be very disappointed if they don't, because I mean, if they think their budget to replace him is like $1 million player, it's going to be a big downgrade, because you have to pay at least like 2 to 3. If you want to sign any free agent that has any ability whatsoever, it's going to be like 2 to 3 million.
Yeah, it's going to be premium either way. You just might not get that same guy. I'm
so I don't think it's a foregone conclusion he's gone. I think both sides have a lot of reasons to make it work. Hopefully they meet in the middle, but I don't think it's unrealistic, because it makes too much sense.
Yeah, I'm with you. And if they do it, I hope they do it soon, because it'd be nice to reward him before the playoffs. So it's like, dude, you did it. You did it. Let's ride.
I think they need to know some of their other numbers, though, at this point. Like, I agree with you that it should have been done. I think Evan made this point. It should have been done, like, pretty early on. They should have, like, snuck it in there. But at this point, they're just going to have to see what some of their other numbers are.
They have to wait on Landeskog. There's no way around that. Like, if Landeskog is not playing, then Drouin for $3 million is an easy call. But if Landeskog is playing, Drouin for $3 million maybe causes problems down the roster. So it all comes down to that. And obviously the Middlestat extension is going to be big too.
Yep.
So, but I definitely agree with you. Like, there's a lot of reason for Drouin to want to stay. He's an Alan Walsh client, and Alan Walsh.
Good point.
He's driving that price up every day on Twitter. He's
But is some team ready to throw it down, though? You know what I mean? Like,
if you're the Blackhawks, aren't you like dreaming of pairing Drouin and Bedard together? I would be.
Yeah, someone in Bedard for sure, and someone like Drouin who has a little bit of youth and experience, no doubt, and a touch, and apparently a nice little one-timer as well. How about that, like one-timer mirror image from McKinnon to Drouin, then from Drouin to McKinnon? That was pretty cool. Huh? Yeah. All right, Ezra. Well, you won the breakaway challenge with 8 points. Jackie, you were close. You had 7, so you were breathing down his neck. But Ezra, so since you won the breakaway challenge, you get to introduce the next segment. What do you got for us?
Yeah, well, it's something that I think we've talked about every episode since it happened. But Jackie wasn't here last week, and I'm just curious to hear, mostly from you, Jackie, but from everybody, how we're feeling about the Casey Middlestat fit. I know. Jackie, you were down on the trade, and I don't want to make it a comment on the trade overall, really, because the Byram side of it is its own argument, and its own issue. But how are you feeling about Casey Middlestat here, Jackie?
Pretty similar.
Really? His play hasn't changed your mind at all.
No, not really. I mean, they won every game. What I need to see from him to really have my mind change isn't going to happen over the course of a week or two. Like, I wasn't a fan of his game to begin with, so it's going to take a lot more than that for me to completely change my mind. The things I like, it seems like he's picked the system up. Like, he knows, what to do and where to go. So that's always nice. And the passing, obviously, is what he's good at. I just don't know that he is that much better than Drouin, to be honest. And that's not an insult. I just argued that the Avs need to keep Drouin.
Yeah.
But I don't see him as a clear, even tier higher yet. And so I'd like to see more Like the goals he scored is nice, but those are like the kind of only goals he scores. Like there's a reason why he's not a goal scorer. It's kind of left side, coming down the wing, short side, like doesn't really have great touch around the net. There's a lot of almosts, and I need to see like, there's even, AHL players that do good at almost. I'm not saying he's an AHL player. Don't think I'm making that comparison. I'm just saying there's a lot of looks good but doesn't happen. And so, I'm not expecting him to move mountains in 2 weeks either. But for me to really have my mind changed on him is he's going to get a big contract and he's going to have to live up to it. So I'd say ask me in a year if he's living up to the 6 or 7 million he's going to get. I'd like to see him do some heavy lifting. I'd like to see him on the penalty kill. I'd like to see him be the key guy in defensive zone situations. I mean, he's got to at least do what Comfer did. And then he's sort of got to bring the skill that Kadri did. I'm not expecting career Kadri. Like, nobody's doing that, even including Kadri himself. I'm not expecting 80 points. But he's got to be that true secondary offense option. I don't really think he's, like, driving the bus, driving his own line yet. There's a lot. And I'm saying, I'm not expecting him to blow my mind over the next week or two. But there's a lot of things that I'd like to see. I'd like to he's willing to get in battles, but he's not great at them. He's not the most physical guy. There's just a lot of reasons why he was never like wouldn't it be cool if Middlestat was on this team? Like, I never had that feeling. So even apart from the Byram part of it, I was never like, ooh, that'd be kind of cool. Like, I never had that impression of him. So he's got to come a long way for me to be like, wow, it's really cool. They paid him $7 million and I'm going to have to watch him play for the next 7 years. Like,
So
we got to get there.
So your reaction to the trade was, oh, interesting. And then you saw Byron.
No. Interesting. Let's just say that was not my reaction.
Yeah. Well, it was before you saw Byron, maybe. Just maybe.
No.
I will give Jackie this. I am in agreement that Middlestat has not moved mountains within 2 weeks, and I don't think really anybody was kind of expecting that. But I do think that like some of the plays that he's made are they're not like 100% there yet, I guess you could say. And I'm referencing particularly on Sunday the game against the Penguins, the 3-on-1 that he had with Nichushkin and Arturi Lehkonen. They passed that around too much. Middlestat, Middlestat, we know what his release is, right? We saw it one time against Edmonton, and it was phenomenal. It was really good to see that. And Middlestat has to take that shot instead of trying to pass it along and move it along still. Now, was that all his fault? No. I mean, Nichushkin could have taken that shot. Lehkonen could have taken a shot beforehand. It's just a matter of I think getting the right people around him. And I know we've touched on it before about how Middlestat isn't the biggest, puck battler, and he's going to need two guys that are also going to be wanting to shoot rather than pass and try and find a teammate, because that's more so what Middlestat does, right? And we've seen him kind of swap around we saw it at least a little bit where he swapped with McKinnon and played on the first line and had Rantanen and one of Lehkonen, Nichushkin, Drouin on the other side to maybe try and provide some more offense and get the puck more to the net, which I think kind of worked, but not really. So yeah, I think he's found the system well. I think it's just a matter of getting his feet, I guess, kind of more settled in, a little more wet. And I'm sure that Bednar is going to be wanting him to shoot more, right? Because he needs a shooter on that second line.
He's not. I mean, his career high is 15 goals. I'm not saying like that's just might not be who he is. Like I think it's fine to encourage shooting, but I'm not sure how much ceiling is there. I should have also mentioned I like that he can play with good players. That's a good thing. But for what they're gonna have to pay him, I'd like to see him drive the bus more, carry the puck more, you want to see the skills show up in more than just a couple areas. So like I said, for me, there's a lot of things, but I'm not putting it on him that he needs to impress me in 2 weeks, but I'm also not going to have my mind changed in 2 weeks. Like, he's fit in fine. I think he's, especially when he had that play between Nichushkin and Rantanen, that was really nice. And you say, well, it's Nichushkin and Rantanen, but at least he fit the puzzle there. He was part of the play, fit the puzzle. But like you're not going to have that all the time. So
I
gotta
think
gotta create offense in other ways.
I think a really good test for him is going to be the playoffs coming up here in a few weeks. That because if I'm not mistaken, he doesn't have any playoff experience yet
No.
being with
None,
Buffalo. So that's going to be a real big test for him, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Centering the second line on a team that's expected to win the Stanley Cup or at least compete for the Stanley Cup, and coming off 2 years ago when your second line center had a career year and was a big driving force to winning the cup. He's going to have a lot of pressure put on him there. And will he live up to that in any sort of similar fashion? Just a month or two into his new life in Colorado. That's going to be a really big test for sure. And I think he's definitely going to be one player that everybody is going to be watching for that reason. And it might just determine what his future looks like number wise anyway. For Chris McFarland.
I think they're already in deep. He's 1 year arbitration to UFA. Like they got to show him the money.
Yeah, he's gonna get money.
So I'm worried about him living up to the contract and like really make an impact in the playoffs. I mean, if he did that, that would be nice, obviously. But it's like he's gonna get a big contract. That's kind of. I'm just kind of like, this is it. This is the guy you chose. We're not even talking about the trade. We're just saying this is the guy that you're going to hitch your wagon to. And he's going to have to play a big role and be worth a lot of money. Is he the guy? That's where I'm at. I'm not it's a tomorrow problem kind of person. It's anybody listening to this podcast before should know that. I kind of care about ramifications, even inside the window. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, you're our think about tomorrow person, definitely. But like Evan mentioned, hasn't played. I would say his highest stakes hockey was in 2016 at the IHF World Juniors, 18 and under. They took bronze at US, so that will be the proving ground for Casey. I will say that kind of along with kind of what Jackie has had to say. I think the numbers mostly that I look at in terms of like if a coach is starting to warm up to a guy is ice time. And we'll just put it this way. When he played Edmonton on March 16th, he had 18 minutes of time on ice. And then against Montreal last night, he only had 15. And he's averaged about 15 and a half his career. And he's averaged about 16 this season so far in 8 games with the Avs. And I know, whatever, make fun of me for doing this, but I always like to compare to 21-22 Kadri. Obviously, that's a career year, but when we're looking at just ice time, not even points, Kadri was on the ice for almost 20 minutes a game in 21-22. So there's
that's a fair point. I'd also look at Comfer. Yeah. I mean, he was we didn't like him at that second line center role, but he was that Swiss Army. He had a lot of tools that Bednar liked, I'd also like to see the ice time compare there because he's got to be someone you're thrown out in a lot of different situations as that secondary guy.
His average ice time for the Avs last season in 82 games was 20 minutes of average ice time.
So I think that's a fair thing to say. Is if you're really in that 2C role and that's who you are legitimately, not just what's put out on social media, then you probably are playing 20 minutes a game on this team. I think that's a fair point.
Well, just to since I guess I have to be the Casey Minnesota
devil's advocate. Yeah,
I am. I'm thrilled about him. I look to the long-term future and I'm like, yeah, he's here. It's great. But he was the fourth highest. He had the fourth highest ice time among forwards last night. It was a little bit lower, and then that Edmonton game was the only game where he got to play on power play 1 because Drouin was out, so that's why his ice time was higher. But for me, it's the things that I didn't expect from his game that have me so excited. Like, he is effective in the defensive zone. He pulls pucks off the wall pretty well. He doesn't necessarily engage in battles like Jackie said. He's not, shoving guys around on the walls, but he's just coming in, kind of like poking the puck free and pulling it out and making a nice pass. For the most part, there have been some miscues as well. He's new to the system. That's going to happen, but. Man, I've been really impressed with him through all 3 zones, and that's something I wasn't expecting. So,
what did you think of the play last night with Suzuki kind of just beating him around the corner? Is that just like bad positional play off the draw?
Yeah, that
from
was
the
terrible.
whole team.
That was
From the
terrible.
whole team. Yeah.
It was like they scored and they're like, okay, this game's over. And then immediately all of them were like, oh, shoot, right. We're still playing.
I mean, I was literally finishing my tweet, for that. I have scored, and then I'm like, huh? What
Yeah.
just happened?
Yeah, I
What?
was at that game. I don't think everyone around me had even sat down yet. Like, I was just like, what? Like, I didn't even see it. I had to look it up on my phone
Yeah.
because I was just like, what happened? I had no idea. Yeah,
I mean,
that was.
Suzuki made him look like a child, but I really don't think it was like I don't think that's reflective of Middlestad's game. That was just
No.
one freakish, horrible play
Yeah.
from the entire team just still being asleep. It was
Weird.
bizarre. Yeah.
Well, it's
But
funny
I
that you
actually
say
have to
that.
go, so I'm
Oh,
gonna
yes.
end with Casey Middlestad's the best. Y'all can.
We love you, Ezra. Good luck, my friend. We love you. Thanks for
Bye,
joining us.
Adios.
So I'm with Ezra though too. Like so far for me, it's so far so good. I think that you two are right though, that like now is not when I need what I need to learn from though. And that's kind of what we talked about when the trade initially dropped was it's going to feel good in the regular season, but where he's really going to have to prove himself is in the playoffs. And I like that Ezra mentioned the second power play, and that with Drouin out, he was on the second power play. I'm of the opinion that your second line center should probably be on your power play one. So if he's not, that might tell you something as well. So we'll see how that plays out. Maybe we can get Casey Middlestat back on that power play, but do we want to with Drouin and McKinnon, having their time?
It is kind of an interesting, like how I kind of compared them earlier. Like, it is interesting. Like, if you're consistently choosing Duran over him,
Yeah.
and I know it's still early, but I think that's also something. You're just kind of like, well, who are we investing in here? Who do you think's the better offensive player? Who gives you a better chance to win? Is it, that is kind of telling. And like I said, I'm not expecting him to be everything and do everything. But yeah, as we move on here, it's like, why don't you think he's gonna give you best chance to win?
Yeah.
It would be kind of weird.
It is also telling when you look at how many different options the Avalanche do have on the power play. For sure. I mean, like that's definitely telling, and it might be like a seniority thing more than anything either. And maybe he will. I would look at probably next year in particular, especially if Drouin's not here, him making that appearance on that first power play unit. But again, who knows how often he's going to shoot that puck, right?
Yeah.
How is he going to just find Makar at the top of the zone? Is he going to just try to do like a redirect with Rantanen or Nichushkin at the front of the net there, or just try and feed McKinnon the best he can for his one-timers, So I think it's a little mix of both, that maybe he's not 100% capable of that yet, but it also might just be because the Avalanche have a lot of different options. So it might be interesting to see, particularly in the playoffs, where that goes, I guess, in terms of his power play use.
Yeah, and we'll get an installment of whether or not we'll see him on that power play unit tomorrow against the Rangers, who are a pretty darn good team from the Eastern Conference. So that'll be another good test and another proving ground in terms of the decisions the coaches make and who's on those power play units. But yeah, I think once we start seeing Casey Middlestat playing those 20 minutes, we'll know that Bednar has committed himself as well. I think management has obviously committed. I'm not sure that Bednar has been completely sold yet, which is, I think, reflective in that ice time. I don't think it's like an indictment of Middlestat, but I do think, as we've mentioned, it's going to take time, and Bednar is kind of like easing him into this experience with the hopes of really getting him rolling as we approach the playoffs. I think, what do the Avs have left? 10 games left on the schedule. So we're getting real close.
I do. Before we move on, I do have a topic I think we need to touch on.
Let's do it.
Kovalenko.
Yes. We talked a little bit last week.
Yeah.
But yes, obviously you're the Kovalenko expert here. So
exactly.
That was going to be my topic if I had won. So
let's talk about
it. I guess my question would be, and I do have an opinion on this, but I'll ask it as a question. Just what do you think of their handling of him thus far? What do you think about them assigning him to the Eagles? Obviously the injury plays into it, and I don't think he's like buried forever. But just what do you think about how just how it's gone so far? And it's just bizarre that he was like this unknown in Russia, and he's like in Colorado, and he's still like, where's Nikolai Kovalenko? It's just
Yeah.
weird. But anyway, that's my question. Just what are you guys seeing as of right now?
Well, what Evan said last week, which I thought was so funny, is he said that he's getting in tune with the culture here in Colorado and being vaguely injured. So we don't really know what his injury status is, and I do think that that's kind of like the wild card and why this has been so weird. Because I think from the get, here's what I wonder. Two things. I wonder how much the Avalanche knew about his injury before he got here, and if that had to do with why he was assigned to the Eagles, kind of like posturing, sort of, where it's like, well, if you're not really going to tell us the full picture, we're going to send you down because we're not going to have you come to the NHL and take up, space or contract if you are hurt. We can't really afford that right now. So I think that had something to do with it. I will say though, like I'm kind of got the heebie-jeebies about just how not how the Avalanche have handled it, but how Kovalenko is going to handle not going straight to the NHL, because I feel like that was a pretty clear path for him before that detrimental final minute of his final KHL game. What are your thoughts, Ev?
Well, I was going to mention a couple of things here because obviously, like we said, information around him is kind of limited. But we did get a little bit more, at least today. Megan Angeli was at Eagles practice up in Loveland today,
Nice.
and she's on her Twitter account. She said she talked to Aaron Schneekloth and that Kovalenko's not skating yet, but they plan to have him do it. And I believe Bednar said a couple days ago too that the plan is for Kovalenko to come and eventually play some NHL games, I would assume, before the playoffs start, hopefully.
Yeah.
Just to get his feet adjusted and not like throw him into the fire. He is no Cale Makar when it comes to he's coming in and scoring in the first 7 minutes of your NHL debut, let alone the playoffs. But I do get an idea that there might be some doubts in his mind about going to the AHL first versus the NHL. And that happened, I guess, post trade deadline. So it's not like they wanted an extra roster spot, the Avalanche, that is, to try and bring in somebody else or anything like that. I do think that most of the reason why he's there is for just injury rehabilitation. I don't really see it as much more than that. And I'm going to be interested, I guess, to see. I think I said it last week of like, I'm interested to see how his recovery is going to be, and if and when he will come into the lineup, whether that's with the Avalanche or with the Eagles. And I think I said it last week too about how, if I was not mistaken, that Bo Byram, when he was dealing with his concussion issues and stepped away for a few months, that he went through a rehabilitation process first with the Eagles and played a couple of games with them as well before then coming up with the Avalanche as well. So it could be something similar-ish to that as well. But again, this is why we are not general managers and running the teams.
Well, I look at this schedule, and I did this last week, and Jackie and I was like, oh, the Eagles schedule ends in March. We were wrong about that. They got some games in April. But looking at the Avs schedule, they play the Jets April 13th, the Vegas Golden Knights April 14th, a little back-to-back action, and then end the season with the Oilers on April 18th. And then I go look at the Eagles schedule, and they've got a series this weekend. They've got 2 next week, 1 the following week, and then 2 that last week as well. In fact, Evan, they're going to have a Rams strength night on April 17th, where you get a craft beer pack if you are a Rams alumni. So maybe you should get your butt up there.
Wow.
Take your hat off, by the way.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Don't ask me. I'm still sad about last week about CSU.
I know. I'm still sad too. I was actually really hoping that both Colorado teams would make a little run, but hey, we still got the ladies. I think they play Iowa, Caitlin Clark. So we'll see how that goes for Colorado pride. I know, Evan, don't kill me through the camera. But getting back to Kovalenko and when he might play, those last 3 games, like if he's not in one of those, I just don't see him just coming up and playing in the playoffs. So I'm eyeing that week, the Wild week and the Jets week for him to kind of make his way back up to the Avs, which gives him about half a month and like 2 or 3 series in the AHL to kind of get his wheels going again. I'm just worried about him potentially aggravating said injury at a lower level of hockey. What are your thoughts, Jackie? Because I know you said you had an opinion.
Yes, I do. I have quite a few. I guess I'll go off of what Evan said. You're right. Byram did play 2 games in the AHL, but he did not rehab up there. He was with the Avs the whole time rehabbing, which is where I think it's interesting. I think I don't mind if they want Kovalenko to play a couple, and I think it'd just be 1 series. I don't think it's going to be several, but we'll see about that. Like he has to know. I don't think he's going to be too terribly mad because it is related to the injury. Now, if they assign him to the AHL next year, the clock's going to be ticking because I think the KHL trade deadline is December, so you have to be on the team by then if you want to make the playoffs. So
Okay.
I feel like if it isn't going well by December, he could definitely like pull the ripcord then. But I don't think what happens now is going to make him angry. But maybe if they just keep him there the whole time. But I don't think that's on the table. But anyway, I just find it odd that they reassigned him. Like Denver has, in theory, better doctors, better trainers, better rehab. Not the practice facility, of course, but why? We're trying to get him welcome to the team and acclimated and used to his teammates and the staff and the coaches. Why do you send him to Loveland? Like he can play there. You don't have to like get to know them to play 2 games. It just, to me, it just would seem more important to be in Denver. Like after the trade deadline, the rosters are unlimited. Is it just about money? Is it just about saving like $50K or something? To me, that's just is a little bit off to me. And if you think about like when they signed Ben Myers, they gave him 5 games in the NHL, and this was the year they won the cup. So,
Right.
like, it's not that weird to give. Who knows? They might even sign another guy like that they have to give games to. It's possible.
College, like a college signee.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If they get some sort of guy they had to make promises to, it might even be the same situation. Like Sampo Ranta, remember his first games in the NHL were in the second round of the playoffs. So I don't think it's that weird that they would insert Kovalenko because, that they have this deal or whatnot. But so, like I said, I just think it's weird they sort of like exiled him right away. I mean, it was like literally the day after he showed up, and then he's supposed to go up to Loveland. To me, that's weird. I don't think the playing there a couple games is weird, but I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. I think you're right. Those last home games, you'd really like to see him play for the Avs. That would be nice. That's what I'm hoping for as well. So maybe give it another week or 2.
I was going to say that my concern is that he's not skating yet.
Yeah.
And that with this, I mean, the end of the season is coming up, right? Now it is no Landeskog, of course, where you're going to need to be skating months before maybe even playing again. At least I would imagine anyway with Nikolai Kovalenko, but you still have to get your legs under you for, I would guess, at least a week, just to get yourself back in skating shape and get a feel for being back out on the ice. So, I mean, you really have to make that, I guess, kind of jump soon if you want to have a chance to play, at least before the playoffs begin. If you're the Avalanche, so I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
It's a good point. And Jackie, you just sent me down a rabbit hole. So I guess go to milehighhockey.com tomorrow and read my article about the top undrafted college hockey free agents, because that will tell us something. If the Avs pick up a guy, say like Colin Graff, who is probably the top undrafted free agent right now. If they pick that guy up, I mean, it kind of gives you a clue as to whether or not they see Kovalenko coming up anytime soon as well. I mean, obviously you can get a guy into the system in a way, but someone of those upper tier kind of college free agents, you might and probably do want to see play in a similar fashion to Ben Meyer. So it kind of gets confusing. So Yeah,
I also feel like the regular season doesn't matter. I mean, I've said this several times. I just don't care. Like, I know that they care more than me. I do. I get it. Like, you want the best positioning, but you really want to kill yourself to win the division so you can either get Vegas or the hottest team in hockey, Nashville. I don't know. Just let the chips fall where they may. I think you have to pull some. Like, can they survive sitting Cogliano for a couple nights or Duhaime? Like, I think they
Probably.
can live.
Yeah,
So
probably.
I think they need to play Kovalenko, and if they do get a chance at one of these top guys, I think you have to be willing to do that. And like the regular season, I mean, to me, we're one step away from like exhibition. I just think it's so meaningless right now. Like, it's great they've won a lot, like that's cool. I don't know. I just the feeling I have in this regular season is just so it's just like waiting around. I don't know. They're a good
I,
team. They're gonna make the playoffs. They have a good shot. Like, that's it. I just think what they do for the next month is just kind of like wasting time.
yeah, well, I mean, you're not wrong. Like, depending on how it shakes out in the bottom of the West playoff race, like with the Blues in Vegas over the next couple of nights, like the Avs could clinch not next game, but the game after probably um, clinch a playoff berth altogether. So it's like that they're in, and as Bednar said, if you're going to win a Stanley Cup, you're going to play good teams. So now we're just kind of like jockeying for position, and Winnipeg can't seem to win a game, and Dallas is kind of just doing what we're doing. So it kind of looks like the Avs might steal the division again, and possibly even the whole Western Conference if Vancouver doesn't finish the job, so to speak. So I guess here's to seeing what'll shake out there. I will boldly predict that the Avalanche will win the Central and the West. How about that? And that will segue us into our last segment, which is bold predictions.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
I call that bold talk.
All right, well, let's start with our missing man, Mr. Ezra, who was a part of the Bro Show last week, which involved 3 bold predictions from Evan, Ado, and Ezra. His was that Casey Middlestat would have 5 points between our last episode and this episode. I think he had 2 or 3. Maybe
I think it was
1.
5 total, so that's probably a no.
yeah, that's definitely a no. I think he had 1 last week. So sorry, Ezra, to do you like that when you're not even here to take the buzzer to the face. But good news, Ado said Jonathan Drouin would have 5 points, and that happened in 2 games. So he did it.
That's a good one.
We got a ding there. And Evan, you said that anyone in the NHL would get a shutout. I'm just kidding. You said that
anyone.
Yeah, that was a second.
I messed up, and I meant to say that the Avalanche would get a shutout. That's the second time I've done that. At least the Avalanche did not get shut out, unlike the last time when I said that anybody would score a hat trick, and I think it was Cody Glass that scored a hat trick on the Avs.
Yeah.
The first and last probably of Cody Glass's career he had that night.
At least it didn't happen to the Avs. The Columbus game, that was the one I was hoping would be the shutout. Didn't quite work, and of course the Montreal one didn't work out either.
I was thinking that was going to be the one, honestly, especially after Eustace got his extension and then was named the starter. I'm like, all right, here we go. It's time to get a shutout, Eustace. But it didn't work out. That's okay. That's why we call them bold predictions. Anytime you predict a shutout, that's hella bold. So let's do them this week. We should have gotten Ezra's before he left, but that's okay. We'll get his maybe on the X. But Jackie, let's start with you. What's your bold prediction this week?
Okay. The next defenseman that scores for the Avs, that scores a goal, will be Sam Girard.
I love it. Hey, and by the way, I'm so glad that I didn't have to put hashtag don't trade Sam Girard on my whiteboard this year, because apparently he's good now to everyone, even though he's been the same guy pretty much the entire time he's been here. But next defender to score for the Avalanche, not Sean Walker, but Sam Girard. Dude, what do you guys think of Sean Walker putting pucks in the net? Are you surprised by that at all?
A little, because he hasn't done it in his career. Like, his career high was 6.
Yeah, I was going to talk about his contract. We'll save that one for the next episode
Okay, because I do have
but
thoughts about
yeah,
his contract as well.
yeah,
So that is a good
we'll save
topic.
that. Yeah, I'm just trying to bring them all up before they get signed so that we can come back and clip all of our stuff and call it cool.
Well, I don't think. I think you're safe. I think just as a kind of like an aside here, I don't think they're gonna sign any like NHL roster player extensions. I think they're gonna get to the RFAs because one reason why I think they signed Annan now is because he has arbitration rights. So they want to get
Right.
ahead of as many of those as possible. So you could see some AHL guys maybe sign, but I wouldn't expect like NHL roster players at this point. So I think we're
Good to
safe.
know. Good to
Yeah.
know. I like that. You heard it here first. All right, Evan, what's your bold prediction this week?
All right, I'm going to focus on the bottom six in particular for the Avs because we've seen the depth that they've provided and that they can bring a team back into a game as we saw against Pittsburgh on Sunday. So I'm going to say a combined between the bottom six. So we'll say that's what Miles Wood, Ross Colton, Parisi, Cogliano, Duhaime, and Trennan. Just kind of listed them all there. I know. Look at me go. I'm gonna say that they combine for 5 points within the next week.
I like it.
That would be good. I wouldn't want to say, is Colton in the doghouse? Like,
It kind of feels like it, doesn't it?
yeah.
It does. And I X'd when we left our first conversation with you, Jackie, about the trade, and I was shaking in my space boots, and I said, because you put it this way. In fact, you said, is Casey Middlestat really your set and forget to see? And AJ commented, what is your other option? And my rebuttal was Ross Colton, the guy who's been playing it the whole season before. But now it's just like, I don't really know where Ross Colton fits into Bednar's. I don't think he's a top 6 forward in his mind anymore. What do you guys think?
I mean, I would say we'll see how it shakes out. Like the playoffs is going to be a big one because I have noticed you have D-zone draws. Colton and his line are going out. You know what I mean? So I have wondered when push comes to shove in the playoffs and you need some heavy lifting if it's going to be Colton again. So we'll see. But it does feel like he's a little bit in the doghouse though, and I haven't really figured that one out. So I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It feels that way. Let's go look at his ice time real quick because I'm
bad.
Really
Let me tell you, if you look, it's not been good.
Yeah, because it's probably taking quite a drop.
He's definitely kind of become an afterthought.
Yeah, he went from playing 19 minutes on March 6th against Detroit, and the most he's played since then looks like 14 and a half against Columbus. He played 11 minutes last night.
Right, and I think there's some 9s in there too, like 10
he played
and
9 minutes against Edmonton. Yeah.
So
and 9 minutes against St. Louis. So
I just find that a little bit, interesting. I mean, they committed to him too. They gave him a decent contract, so I don't think it's not like he's just expiring this year and they can just kind of like, okay, well, you got replaced. So I don't know.
I'm thinking about Logan O'Connor now, and I wonder how much of that Wood Colton O'Connor line had to do with the style of O'Connor. You know what I mean? And kind of like how that meshed together. Because even I think Miles Wood is kind of not in a doghouse necessarily, but he's definitely not like setting our hair on fire anymore, kind of like he was.
I've always kind of liked that line with Drouin on it, and I know that like he's earned. He deserves the place that he's getting on the top line. I think ultimately Nichushkin needs to be there.
Yeah.
And I think if Drouin gives life to Colton and Wood, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that might give you just better lines throughout the lineup. So we'll see.
This is interesting though, because I'm looking back again and March 6th against Detroit. Let's see, March 12th against Calgary, Miles Wood played 16 minutes. He played 10 minutes last night, 12 minutes the game before, 11 minutes the 3 games before that. So his ice time has also taken kind of a digger. So.
And they've made a big commitment to him too. So I don't I don't know that you can, just kind of
Head scratch.
marginalize those two. You have to make it work with those two because they're going to be around. So,
All right. Well, you've given me my bold prediction then. My
okay.
bold prediction is that both Miles Wood and Ross Colton will have goals this week. Before
Well,
That
that
our
would
helps
be
with my
good.
bold prediction too.
That would help.
Yeah.
Yep, that would help Evan and maybe help them get back on track. I mean, Colton did have a big goal. It was in one of their comebacks. Was it Edmonton?
Let me see.
I think that was the game he had the tying goal or something.
Columbus.
No, it was
No, it was one of the important games. Was it Vancouver?
It was Vancouver.
Okay, one of those two. Yeah.
The one where it just barely sneaked in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a big goal. So, that should
That was
give
a
him
great
some
game.
confidence. But
Yeah, well, that, folks, is our bold prediction, something we do every week. If you have a bold prediction of your own, do it on X and do hashtag bold predictions and send it on over to our Twitter at all caps MHH_lab.
that's true. If you hit on
Yeah.
one, we
We'll-
definitely should shout it out.
Yeah, we'll give you a live ding and then you'll be a part of the show officially. So that'll be really cool. But if you enjoyed this broadcast, thank you folks so much for tuning in. We have right now about 300 live viewers, which is awesome. We're kind of starting to make a theme out of having hundreds of you watch us
Yeah,
live.
that's
So
pretty cool.
I'm trying to keep my feet out of my mouth nowadays, now that I can see that big number up in the top left of my screen. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoy this program, please head on over to milehighhockey.com. As usual, we have pre-games, recaps, and opinion pieces. And as usual, go Avalanche. Hopefully we see goals from Miles Wood and Ross Colton, and that
And
bottom
Sam
six
Girard.
combines. And that bottom six combines for 5 points. And then we see Sam Girard, scoring as the next defender
he's
for the
due. I think
Colorado
it's
Avalanche.
coming.
He's due, and man, if he hasn't had a great season. I hate to toot my own horn, but the guys that I really like have done so well this year, and I'm just so happy about it. The Avs will have the Rangers tomorrow night, the Predators on Saturday, and the Blue Jackets on Monday, and we will probably be right back in your ears or in front of you to cover what happened and what will to be. So, signing off from the Mile High Hockey Lab, I'm here with Jackie and Evan. My name is Adrian. Go Avs.
Thank you for tuning into the Mile High Hockey Lab.